Hello, my name is Nadine and welcome to Hop Along Studio. So in today's video, I wanted to talk with you about how we can prepare for Mental Illness Awareness Week that happens at the beginning of October. So you may struggle with mental illness, or someone you know may struggle with mental illness. It's one of those things that often we have to battle on our own because in society it isn't talked about. There's a lot of stigma around mental illness. And I believe that these Mental Illness Awareness Weeks is a great place for us to maybe look at what we believe about mental illness, maybe understand our own biases, and maybe find a way that we can educate ourselves so we can help those around us that might be struggling with mental illness. I wanted to talk about how we prepare for Mental Illness Awareness Week when it comes down to situations like depression and anxiety, because that's what I have personal experience with. I went through several years where I was going through some pretty serious depression and anxiety symptoms, and I was dealing with some pretty awful trauma, and it was not an easy time for me. It was a very dark time for me, and now that I've come through that and I've become to a place of having much better mental health, I also want to try to encourage those who maybe you aren't at a place where you're mentally ill, but you're not necessarily at a place where you're mentally healthy, but being able to deal with this before it becomes a diagnosed illness, it can allow us to maybe miss out on a lot of trauma and a lot of hard times that maybe we can avoid just by having a little bit of awareness. So how I'm preparing for Mental Illness Awareness Week is by looking at my own mental health. So what are the stressors in my life? What are the things that are bringing me happiness? What are the things that are making me feel depressed or anxious? I don't think it's just one thing or another. We're either healthy or we're not healthy. By taking the time to gain some awareness, to figure out where are these points in our lives that are making us feel unwell, we can actually make some effort to get to a place of being in better health by finding some help or by finding an outlet that's going to help us stay mentally healthy. So there are practices you can put in place that help with your mental health. I know for me, coming from the place of depression and anxiety, a creative habit that leads to reflection is very important to me. By having the opportunity to slow down, to understand where the stressors are, to go, why did I react so strongly to that particular situation? And realizing a lot of it has to do with trauma that I've had before. And then working through that and understanding like, well, that's why I reacted that way, but what can I do in the future that I don't react as strongly? And it's getting to a place of being very reflective and having good mental health and being in a place where we can not stay sick, but we can actually move towards health. So one of the things that's going to help me this month in building my creative habit is Inktober. Inktober is actually a drawing challenge that's done in the month of October. It's 30 days. It comes with prompts of things you can draw, and the idea is that it's there to help you build good drawing skills. For me, when I was struggling with my drawing skills and even struggling with being able to take this time to be in a creative habit when I didn't have a lot of time, by using something like Inktober, which came with prompts, instead of staring at a blank piece of paper going, okay, how am I going to work through these feelings I have, instead it gave me a place where to start. And by even having one word that I had to draw something on, it often brought to mind other things that I was struggling with or other things I needed to deal with that I was able to deal with better because of the fact that I had Inktober as a prompt, as a place to start delving into creativity and delving into how I was feeling. So what if you're not a drawer or you have no interest in learning how to draw? Then I would suggest a traveler's notebook. A traveler's notebook is a great resource because it is a small notebook that allows you to have a place where you can journal. You can include pictures, you can include sketches, you can include poems and quotes. For me, it's a great way of being able to put thoughts down in a small format that doesn't take a lot of time. So when you may not have hours to reflect, you may have 15 or 20 minutes. But by going through this creative practice of journaling, of being able to write down your thoughts and your feelings, can make a huge difference on the rest of your day. it can really help you be able to focus on what is bothering you or what is great in your life. I also use a traveler's notebook to be able to share the things that I am grateful for, the things that are beautiful in my life. Because I find that sometimes I have my dark days where my pages are dark, and then the next one my pages are a lot happier and a lot lighter. And I think that's really important, because when you have those moments of anxiety and depression, you're starting to feel really down, you're starting to feel very hopeless. Sometimes we're reflecting back on the things that are beautiful in our lives can help us realize that maybe for the moment I'm in a dark place. Maybe in the moment I am not doing okay. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be the rest of this day or the rest of my life. And maybe I need a good night's sleep and I wake up tomorrow and I will feel better. And that's not to trivialize serious anxiety or depression, but maybe it's coming from a place of being in that place of a lot of anxiety and depression and coming to a place of being in a healthier place where it doesn't mean I don't struggle with it, but I'm able to cope better. I'm able to have activities that help me more. And so for me, a traveler's journal has been part of that practice, that part of that therapy to move me into a better place. So my hope for you during Mental Illness Awareness Week is just that we learn something. We either learn something about ourselves or we become educated so we can help others. I believe this week is really important because there is so much misinformation and stigma about mental illness. The idea that if you're mentally ill, you'll never get better. The idea that, well, if you're not a bipolar or you're not schizophrenic, well, the rest of it you can just get over without problems. You know, it's so easy to trivialize depression and anxiety and addiction. And these are things that are shaping our society and not for the better. So by taking the time to educate ourselves, by taking the time to look at our own mental health, I don't believe that we necessarily all need to fall into mental illness, or that it shouldn't always get to the point where it becomes a mental illness. I look at the path that I took from being mentally healthy to being not very mentally well, back to being mentally healthy again, and it was a progression. It definitely was a progression. It did not happen overnight. I made choices that allowed me to move towards mental illness. And then I also made choices to get myself out of that. And things happen to us. We have experiences, and maybe we have chemical imbalances in our brain. Maybe we have things that happen to us that we need help with. But that doesn't mean that we're not beautiful people. That doesn't mean that we don't have something to offer the world. It's just figuring out a way to move back to a place of mental health. So I also want to include some mental illness resources to this video and also to the article on my website. I believe that the more we can educate ourselves and we can help others, as well as maybe be more aware of what's going on in our own lives, the more we can move away from mental illness. There are some really serious mental illness conditions out there that will need professional help. But I also think that for those of us who are maybe looking at it from the perspective of, well, I know I'm not doing okay, but I don't necessarily fall into the mental illness category, I was really hoping that this might give you some information to help you stay in a place of being mentally healthy. And so I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, if you could like it, subscribe to my channel. Maybe provide a comment below about what you're going to do to prepare for Mental Illness Awareness Week. As well, I have my website, hopalongstudio.com, where I have some other ideas on how we can have good mental health in our everyday lives. I hope you have a really great week, and I will see you next time.